Europe continues to burn. Hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes as massive wildfires blaze across Italy, Spain and Portugal. And as temperatures continue to rise, experts predict the risk of wildfires and heat waves is also expected to escalate further. But this risk is now also affecting the tourism sector of the country. Southern Europe has now witnessed a tourism drop so severe that it's their lowest since 2019. And amid a heat wave gripping much of Europe, temperatures in the continent rose to more than 40 degrees Celsius last weekend. Beginning with Portugal, over 1,100 firefighters and 14 water-carrying aircraft have been deployed to battle wildfires in central Portugal. Around 17,000 acres were destroyed and at least 11 people reported injured in the blaze. Well, civil protection authorities warned that extreme windy conditions could escalate wildfires, which would then take days to put out.
The fire started 5 or 6 kilometers from here, passed by here and left things as you can see. It was very frightening, with great speed, strong wind, and it was a miracle that the houses were saved.
Moving on to Italy, from severe heat waves to drought, off late, Italy has been reeling under extreme climate crisis as well. Nearly 600 residents and tourists have now been evacuated from western Sardinia that was ravaged by wildfires over the weekend. Now, according to civil protection authorities, no deaths or injuries have been reported. But as the fires continue to rage, at least 4 firefighting planes from France and Greece joined the Italian firefighters' air fleet to help control the blaze. Now, since early Saturday, at least 50,000 acres of land have gone up in flames. And despite emergency workers' efforts to save animals, hundreds of sheep, goats, cows and pigs died after being trapped in barns at farms. Apart from Italy and Portugal, wildfires are on the rise in Spain due to heat and drought. Almost 140 people have been evacuated in Spain's northeastern Catalonia region after a large forest fire spread across the equivalent of 600 soccer fields within a day. Spanish authorities evacuated several villages overnight as a precaution, and an estimated 4,000 people lost power as a result of the blaze. Now, more than 65 firefighting units were deployed by Catalonia authorities, accompanied by at least 10 task force units from France. The fire so far has ravaged over 435 acres of land, and officials estimate at least 2,500 hectares remain threatened. Now, extreme weather in July has caused havoc across the planet, with record temperatures in China, the United States and parts of southern Europe sparking fires, water shortages and a rise in heat-related hospital admissions. Climate scientists predict that the increasingly extreme summers seen across the world are a result of climate change, which is caused by human-induced global warming. All right, for more on this, we're being joined by Lyndon Pronto, who is a senior fire management expert from the European Forest Institute. He's joining us live from Germany. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Thank you.
Now, extreme floods to heat waves and now wildfires. Europe is reeling under extreme climate conditions. What, according to you, is fueling these wildfires, Lyndon?
Yes, of course, we have the weather conditions, which, drives fire behavior, especially the wind. So when we've had these high winds in the last few days in the Mediterranean region, this, of course, any spark that ignites, any cause of fire, whether arson or accidental or trash burning, if you have high winds, it gets the fire going very fast. And then we have an overabundance of vegetation. So available fuel in the Mediterranean region is basically suffering from land abandonment. It's had much more extensive land use in past centuries. And right now we have such a buildup of vegetation in the landscape that when a fire starts, there's really a lot of fuel available, which makes it very difficult to control. And when you have the high temperatures also, in addition to that, it of course contributes to fast fire propagation, and then even aerial assets like like the airplanes that try and assist in such circumstances.
Right.
When you have very high winds, then even these aircraft can't fly in those conditions.
Lyndon, now wildfires are raging in Italy, in Spain and in Portugal. Talk to us about how prepared these countries are to curb the ongoing crisis.
Well, it really depends on different contexts. In Sardinia, they have a lot of experience with wildfires. They have some training and some equipment, but you also see that not everybody has, for instance, the proper wildland firefighting clothing, because you cannot fight fire as you would a structure fire. A wildland fire is very different. You have to have different type of clothing and equipment. On the other hand, in places like Catalonia or in Portugal, these are two examples of countries which have highly specialized wildland firefighters who are very prepared to fight these types of fires and also well trained to do so, understanding fire behavior. So they are very prepared. But one thing that has to be said is, we are experiencing a simultaneity of events, which also means when there's many fires burning at once, the capacity to contain and control them often exceeds local capabilities, which is why it's very important that we have mechanisms like the European Union Civil Protection Mechanism, so that countries step up and help out other countries. And right now, it's not just fires; it's also the flooding that's going on. So, the emergency services system overall is very taxed across Europe.
Right. Lyndon, now Europe plans to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. With the current circumstances, how difficult will it be to achieve that objective?
Well, that depends a lot on our human behavior. It depends a lot on policies. We are very slow to give up the things that we like, which is obviously contributing to the problem. And we're very lagging in terms of stricter policies to enact the required change to reach carbon neutrality. Now, that said, let's say we did reach carbon neutrality tomorrow, it wouldn't change the fire situation on the ground for these reasons I mentioned, where we have this immense buildup of vegetation in the landscape. So we actually need more good fires, so more prescribed burning. We need more grazing. We need more value chains in the landscape, and this is what will really help curb these types of situations. We cannot stop climate change, but what we can do is try and adapt ourselves, make our communities more fire resistant or resilient. We have to assume that these communities will burn, and so that's one thing we can do is embrace what's coming towards us and focus also on adaptation strategies.
Now, Lyndon, I just want to pick from your experience. You're a senior fire management expert. What can you tell us about how or what can be best done to better prepare communities for such wildfires in times to come?
Yeah, it comes down to several different factors. I already talked about the fuel management. So this available vegetation, this needs to be reduced. We need more individual responsibility. So many of these countries and cultures we live in, we have a culture of picking up the phone and calling 112, as it were, in our case, and relying on outside help to come and save us. Now, firefighters are the last line of defense. All this begins with rural and urban planning. It begins with where we place our value chain. So we need more support in these other types of activities. And then there's of course many measures we can take. If we talk about Central or Northeastern European countries, which are just now starting to really be confronted with wildfires, our construction needs to change. We need to fire harden our homes. We need to adapt. And then, of course, it comes down to training. So I mentioned in the beginning how some of these countries have highly trained wildland firefighters, but most don't. And so we need to also better equip our responders, and training is key, and the proper equipment and protective clothing and these sorts of things. So really preparing our responders also to deal with the eventuality of fire.
So responders need to be as trained as the regular people need to be aware of these situations. Thank you so much for joining in. That was Lyndon Prontro, who's a senior fire management expert from the European Forest Institute, joining us live from Germany.
Thank you for having me.